Everyone, welcome to today's virtual discussion about mindful eating. This is the first Google Hangout panel hosted by Mondelez International in the Asia Pacific region. Previous panels on this topic of mindfulness can be viewed on the Mondelez YouTube channel. My name is Marie Ferguson and I'm the Director of Dietitian Connection, which is an organisation that inspires and empowers dietitians to realise their dreams. It's my pleasure to be here today as your moderator to guide you through this virtual discussion. This panel is part of Mondelez International's Call for Wellbeing, a call to action for its employees, suppliers and community partners to work together and develop new approaches to have a positive impact on the wellbeing of the planet. Today we're going to be exploring the concept of mindfulness and how it relates to nutrition and eating. Panelists will discuss the current nutrition environment and share insights into how you can apply mindfulness to your eating and snacking behaviours and overall wellbeing. We're going to be asking our experts a series of questions during the first 45 to 50 minutes of the panel, and after that we'll spend the remaining time addressing questions submitted by you. You can still submit questions by reaching out to the email mindfulsnackingpanel@inventivehealth.com. So that's mindfulsnackingpanel@inventive, INVENTIV health.com. Or just reply to the email that you received with the instructions for today's Google Hangout. Please also reach out to this email address if you experience any technical difficulties during the Hangout, and a member of our team will reach out to help. So with that said, I'm so excited to be here today with our three distinguished panelists. Firstly, we have Dr. Tim Crowe. Tim is an advanced accredited practicing dietitian and associate professor within the School of Exercise and Nutrition Sciences at Deakin University, focusing on nutrition and dietetics in the areas of nutritional physiology and biochemistry, as well as the applied role of nutrition and disease prevention and management. Also joining us is Christina Turner, and Christina is an accredited practicing dietitian and nutritionist. She's also a senior teaching fellow at Bond University and founder of Soul Nutrition Mindful Eating programs, where she works with her team to educate clients about nutrition and wellness and how to apply mindful eating in their daily lives. Finally, we have Shetal Ondium. Shetal is the Marketing Director for Chocolate in Australia and New Zealand at Mondelez International. He will provide insights from his experience on how Mondelez International is working to address consumers' needs and empowering them to make snacking more mindful. So now let's kick off the discussion. So we'll start with Christina, given your expertise on this topic. Could you share with us some details on what mindfulness is and where did it originate from?
Yeah, for sure. So mindfulness is really living with awareness. And what that means is awareness of our thoughts. It could be awareness of our bodies or our surroundings as well. So whether that might be the people around us or our environment. There's another important component though that runs alongside this awareness, and that's just a wisdom that comes to help us to learn how to act and respond rather than being quite reactive. So when we're practicing mindfulness, we're really learning how to live non-judgmentally in a kind way to cope with the day-to-day things that come up, whether they're the chatter in our mind or whether it's sort of unhelpful situations that come up. In terms of where it originates from, it's actually originally came from Eastern meditation practices, so mainly Buddhism. Importantly though, you don't need to be religious at all to practice mindfulness. You don't need to be a spiritual guru by any means. I guess it's come to the West from a man called John Kabat-Zinn, and he was, I guess, the person back in the 70s. He's from the University of Massachusetts Medical School, and he really brought mindfulness from the East to the West, just due to action program. And now it's really taking hold.
Is it true, Christina, that it seems that in the social media and in the public that more people are embracing mindfulness? Do you think that's true and is happening more now than ever before? And if
Definitely.
so, what? Yep.
You go.
Go ahead. And then I was just going to say, what are some ways you see people adopting it?
Yeah, so definitely. So as mindfulness sort of came across to the West, it has been becoming more and more popular. So originally it came to us just through the work of a stress reduction program, and now we know mindfulness is helping with lots of different things. So it could be anxiety, it helps with depression, helps to manage pain, helps us to have body acceptance. It's also involved with the way we eat as well. So there's lots of ways it's been shown to help us. And I think the ways people are probably using it, there's lots of different ways. There's both formal and informal ways of mindfulness. So I think a lot of people watching today would probably know about the formal kinds of mindfulness. So that's things like yoga and meditation. And they are really structured, regular practices that we can do to incorporate mindfulness in our life. The informal kinds of mindfulness are just the way we approach our day-to-day tasks and activities in a mindful way. So if you think about some of the things that you do on autopilot in the day, so that might be brushing your teeth, making a cup of tea. It could be just as simple as washing the dishes, if you don't have a dishwasher, that is. And we can, if you think about the dishwashing as an example, a way that people can use mindfulness there is just paying attention, so having a really close awareness of the task. So it could be the temperature of the water, the texture of the water, it could be the way the soap feels in their hands, the way the plate slips through their fingers when they're washing the dishes. So yeah, mindfulness is becoming popular, and it's coming across all parts of our life.
Thanks, Christina. So Christina shared that she thinks more people are embracing mindfulness. Shetel and Tim, I wondered if you could share your perspectives on mindfulness and how the concept can apply to the work you do. Perhaps we can start with you, Tim.
Thank you, Marie, for the introduction, and also thank you for Mondelez for the invitation to speak today. That was a wonderful introduction by Christina. That's pretty much everything you need to know about mindfulness. So I'll give you my very short executive summary. Mindfulness is really about paying attention to the present moment without judgment, and that present moment can be anything. It can be brushing your teeth, it can be sitting in a meditative posture on the top of a mountain, it can be running, it can be whatever you want it to be. You can be mindful of that particular moment without applying too much judgment or stress to it. From my perspective, from a research perspective, I look at the evidence base for mindfulness, and certainly there is a building evidence base that's of benefit in a whole range of conditions, particularly obviously in mental health. But also there's a recent review published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition by a guy by the name of Eric Robinson in 2003. So if anyone's interested in this, they can Google it and find it fairly quickly. It was a review of all of the attentive eating or mindfulness type studies that looked at how that affected what people ate. And it showed that eating attentively at that particular moment, with as few distractions as possible, and thinking about what had been eaten during the day, had a meaningful effect on what someone ate at that particular time. So from the eating perspective, there is some evidence it can be a good way to incorporate some aspects into your life, but outside of that, there is potential benefits for a whole range of other aspects, which is why we are seeing the word mindfulness pop out everywhere, including from the corporate world, where it's been moved from the east into our daily lives, and everybody seems to be getting on the mindfulness bandwagon today.
Thanks, Tim. And Shetel?
Sorry, just was on mute. Thank you again for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I think, from our perspective, it's coming from a different approach, actually being a supplier of snacks, and we focus a lot about the pleasure that our products can provide, and put a lot of focus then in terms of understanding permissibility. So actually, people can actually understand the consequences of actually whether they are thinking from a physical or more emotional point of view in terms of what actually snack is to part of their lives. So we think potentially more about the well-being, and then trying to actually understand how well-being can transform into mindfulness. And hopefully later today I can share some examples in terms of how we can do that.
Thanks so much, Shetel. So now we're going to turn to discussing what's trending in nutrition. So we've talked about a little bit of background on mindfulness, but I would like to hear from each of you what are some of the key trends you think people are embracing with regards to eating and nutrition beyond mindfulness. And Tim, maybe we can start with you again as well.
Okay, sorry.
Christina, we might turn over to you. Oh,
He's back.
Have you got me?
Yep.
yeah, good to go, Tim.
Okay, just a bit of a...
No,
Am I still there? Okay,
yep,
please
there you
go on
are.
to someone else. Okay, the trending things I'm seeing obviously is what we're talking about today, and that's going to be mindful.
No, I think we're losing Tim. We might go back to you,
Thanks.
Christina.
Okay.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I guess the thing that I see trending, which has probably been building up over the last few years, and that's a real focus on dieting and fad diets. So by that I mean following restrictive diets that probably cut out a number of food groups. You only have to scroll through the latest Instagram feed to see the number of different diets people are following, and a real preoccupation with nutrition and body image at times. So it's probably not a particularly helpful trend, but it is a trend that's out there. The other thing that is really growing is, in fact, mindful eating. A lot of people are embracing it. And I think probably the reason they're embracing it is because they're looking for other ways to maintain their health in a more of a long-lasting way, rather than being on a strict diet.
Thanks, Christina. And Cheryl, any thoughts on what you think are some of the current trends?
Yes, absolutely. I think if you take a snacking, specifically a chocolate point of view, we see a significant trend in terms of portion control. So people actually being better able to actually control their intake in terms of packaging being resealable. We see also a trend in terms of the size of chocolate being smaller. So, again, the grammage of each piece actually becomes smaller. There's another trend which is quite significant in terms of the move from milk chocolate to dark chocolate, and the perception of dark chocolate being more permissible indulgence. A third thing that's kind of popping up is actually the broader variety. So with e-commerce specifically, but also with more discounters and specialty shops, there's much more variety, which can then specifically address certain areas, whether it's also allergens or certain dietary conditions. So variety, portion control, and the move from milk to dark is clearly trends we see in our markets.
Thanks for sharing those market insights. Appreciate that, Cheryl. And I think we've got Tim back.
Technology, we expect these things to happen, but we roll and adapt. So I'm back again. I'll start again. The biggest things we are seeing is actually what we're talking about today. Mindfulness is very big, but one thing I'm seeing change quite a lot, and despite the dietary fads coming and going, and banning this food group and blaming everything on this particular food, when you look at the heart of it, there is evidence that overall what these fads and trends are doing is shifting people to eating slightly better. So there's consumer data coming from America and also in Australia that there's been a positive shift to consuming more fruit and vegetables, so only slightly, and less soft drinks and those sorts of things. So that's a positive. So that's something good that's come out of those sorts of trends. And you only have to look at a global giant such as McDonald's in the burger business, where they've had to really shift their product to meet what the upstart competitors are doing in what they've been offering, which is a perception of a more of a healthier, more of a clean eating type product that consumers are wanting. So in the end, bigger corporations do respond to what consumers want. So that's going to be a positive, that those needs can be met.
Thanks, everyone. So how does mindfulness fit with some of these trends and the fad diets that you've talked about? And how do you see mindfulness fitting in with these in terms of what people are currently eating and snacking? And Christina, we'll start with you this time.
Sure. So as we talked about, a big part of mindfulness is living really non-judgmentally, and that's where it fits in with our eating and our snacking. So we're learning to eat without guilt or judgment on the kinds of foods that we eat. So that's the first thing. The other way mindfulness really fits with how we're eating and how we're snacking is our hunger. So it really helps us to check in with our hunger and our body cues. We decide, are we hungry? How hungry are we? And what kinds of foods might we like to eat that we can really nourish our bodies with? So it's all about bringing a really inquisitive way to the way we eat.
Thanks, Christina, and I'll hand over to you, Tim, for your thoughts.
Was really just a perfect summary of it, because with snacking, there's actually no sort of one way to eat correctly. I mean, that sounds like a strange thing to say, but if you look at how people eat, some people do very well on just several large meals per day. Some people do very well on having lots of small regular meals. So snacking can be a part of anyone's particular way of eating, and snacking is actually a nice example of bringing some mindfulness to how you eat. So it's a nice opportunity where there is a small occasion of time and a small amount of food where it is possible to be mindful of. Because the thing with mindfulness is it's very difficult to do it for a long period of time. We keep failing over and over again. So snacking can fit into mindfulness very easily, because it just gives you that small amount of practice time, or whatever you want to call it, to actually enjoy and savor the food for whatever you're eating at that time.
Thanks, Tim. And Cheryl, from your perspective in the industry?
Yeah, it's interesting actually. You know, we don't specifically ask people about mindfulness when we talk to our consumers, but we do talk about, you know, what the behaviors and their needs and occasions that sits behind the usage. And first and foremost, for all snacks, what comes us first is taste. And you know, it has to be a taste I love, a taste I really cherish. But when you dig underneath, it's quite something that actually I think fits well with the well-being / mindful agenda. One is that in order for actually the product to be perceived as tasting good, we get a lot of comments about being natural, non-GMO, no artificial ingredients, which I think enhances, you know, the permissibility in terms of eating it. It's also about having recognizable contents in terms of the product that goes into whatever you manufacture. And finally enough, specifically on chocolate, what they do say as a key driver, it helps me enjoy life. And that's a good thing in terms of this, what Tim and Christina talked about. It's all about the awareness and the balance. So if we can kind of provide, you know, portionable, you know, permissible snacks that are of high quality, you know, we actually give hopefully the consumers the ability to actually balance and be mindful in terms of their intake as well.
Fantastic, thank you. Along these same lines, then, let's talk a little bit about how snacking, or having that 1 to 2 squares of chocolate after dinner, and well-being and enjoying life, as you talked about, Cheryl, how they can coexist. So Tim, I might start with this time to talk about, you know, how do you see snacking and well-being coexisting?
I think, Marie, you've hit a key word there of saying enjoying life. We can be very fixated on what we should or shouldn't be eating, and there's lots of mixed messages we get in social media and the media. There's a lot of science telling us this is good and this is not so good. Food is pleasurable, you know, at its heart, ignoring all the science and nutrients. You know, food is quintessential to ourselves, our lives, and our culture and how we do things. And it should be enjoyed, whatever that food is. So removing any judgment that a food is good or bad, or, you know, this particular meal is going to be good or bad for me because of the quantity, and just enjoying the experience makes life a lot more pleasurable and enjoyable. And one of the nice things about eating in different ways, without feeling you need to constrain with a particular pattern of eating because some diet guru told you that's how you need to eat to be in the best of health, snacking can be just enjoyed as a mindful moment each day, and you can enjoy the pleasure of eating that food, whatever that is at that time. It can be a piece of chocolate, but you can eat just as mindfully an apple, whatever it is that you find enjoyment and pleasure. And to me, that's an important thing, the pleasure and enjoyment of food. Get that right, you know, eat well most of the time, and everything else takes care of itself as far as your health goes.
Love that, Tim. Thank you. And Christina, your turn now for your thought.
Yeah, that was really great, Tim. I'm all about the love for food, so I'm right on board with you too. I think mindful eating is actually a really good example of how snacking and well-being can exist, because with mindful eating and mindfulness, it's all about accepting everything. So being able to appreciate all foods, and all foods do include snacks. And in terms of snacks, that means all kinds of snacks. So there wouldn't be one snack that's better than another. There might be times when we just need just a small snack just a small amount of food. There might be times where we need a more substantial amount of food to sustain us for a longer period of time. And that's where snacking and wellbeing exist. It's, as Tim said, it's all about the quality. It's the quality over the quantity. When we learn to eat mindfully, we really learn to enjoy our food, and above all, happiness is closely linked with our well-being, as you said, rather than it's not just about nutrition.
Thanks, Christina. And Cheryl, I'll hand over to you for your views on how you see snacking and well-being coexisting. And you talked a little bit about that in the previous question.
Yeah, I'll try to elaborate, see if come up with something else. But it's I completely agree with Tim and Christina in terms of what they said. And I think one word we focus a lot on in terms of when we talk about quality and enjoying food is savoring. If you savor food, you are really enjoying it. And what we tend to see is that then people eat smaller sizes, smaller portions, especially in terms of snacking. And that then links back to if people are aware in terms of what the role of the snacks are for the different occasions. So, if you're looking at more, functional needs, and it could be tide me over or it could be pick me up, you're very clear on what you want to use it for. You kind of better control your intake, and you actually, again, savoring it for that occasion. If you're looking at more emotional need states, it goes back to the enjoyment, relaxation, de-stress, the time on the couch, and really that more mental uplift. And again, the awareness actually drives the intake, and I think that's kind of where we're trying to do as best a job we can in terms of actually addressing that.
Thanks, Cheryl. So now we've discussed all the benefits of mindful eating and snacking, but I wanted to talk to the panelists about, are there any potential challenges to adopting mindful eating and snacking? And Tim, I'll get you to kick off this one again as well. Thanks.
Thanks, Marie. So challenges, mindfulness is so easy to talk about, but it can be so difficult to do. And one of the biggest things is our lives and our distractions. We're always busy. If you want to be perfect at mindful eating, well, go away to a meditation retreat where you can do all this in wonderful circumstances, and that is not our lives. So from the evidence perspective, it shows that the less distracted you are when you eat, you can be more mindful. And people have experienced this when they're sitting on the couch watching TV, and all of a sudden that big packet of chips has completely disappeared without them realizing it happened. So removing as many distractions as possible. So that, of course, is going to be TV, but our digital lives, our phone, our tablets, and so on will help. But finding some small amount of time where you can be perhaps a bit more mindful with one particular meal or one particular snack, rather than trying to feel you have to be mindful about everything you do. Because another thing about mindfulness, no matter how you try and implement it, you will fail at it badly. Everyone does. And in fact, knowing that you're not mindful in that particular moment is being mindful, because it brings your mind back to the present moment. So don't ever beat yourself up because you've forgotten to be mindful 100 times in the last few hours. The fact you actually knew that is actual mindfulness itself. So embrace it, embrace being bad at it. Everybody is very bad at it. But if you know that, and you can just get back on and be more mindful, think about what you're eating, think about the experience around you, it will be a much more pleasurable experience, and you'll get a lot more benefit from it.
I love that, Tim, being mindful about being mindful. That's my quote for the day.
Next level mindfulness.
Yeah, there you go. Christina, any other distractions that you'd like to add about?
Yeah, definitely. So distractions are a big part, and particularly, as Tim was saying, the technology is a big part of our lives. So that's one of the big things that's quite linked with our eating at the moment. I think there's two kinds of distractions, or triggers is like what I like to call them. There's emotional triggers to eating, and there's environmental. So the emotional would be things like any thoughts, feelings, I guess just emotions that run through us that might be things like guilt. It could be feeling sad. It could even be happy. We could be bored. There's so many different thoughts and feelings that we have that can impact on the way we eat, and can often make us eat in quite a mindless way. The environmental triggers are things that are surrounding us on a daily basis, and one of those is the technology. It could also just be as simple as the food that's left on our plate at night, or the leftovers that we might have put on the kitchen bench. It could be in our workplace where we might be at a meeting and different foods have brought in that perhaps we weren't planning on eating. So there's a whole host of things around us that are really triggering us to eat. And what those things are doing, both the emotional and those environmental triggers, they're really stopping us from listening to our internal signals. So the internal signals of being hungry, of being full, and of being satisfied. It's not all doom and gloom though. And as Tim was saying, with mindfulness, it's not actually that hard. It's just, we just need to keep remembering to do it. And again, not beating ourselves up if we forget to. So a good example of getting some practice in to cope with some of those challenges might be with, for instance, some environmental things at work. It could be turning away from our computer screens to eat. It could be taking time out for lunch, or just being a little bit more organised with our food. So making sure we've bought in a bunch of different foods for the day to take advantage of the times when, you know, maybe we might be a little bit more hungrier, or maybe we've got a longer day. So just having a variety of foods on offer as well is a good thing to do.
Thanks, Christina. You talked about overcoming some of the environmental triggers at work. Any quick suggestions on things we might think about at home?
Definitely. So it's all about, I guess, remembering to start with, and looking at our area that we eat. So at home, at the dinner table, for instance, have we turned off the TV? Have we made the setting a nice place so it feels comfortable and wonderful to eat? Are eating the leftovers and overeating on them, are they becoming an issue? So learning to put those things away. So it's all about creating habits and remembering to do it over and over again. So remembering to be mindful over and over again.
That's a great point. I'm probably someone who's guilty of multitasking when I'm eating. So today in particular, I'm going to focus just today to focus on what you've talked about. Sheryl, from a food industry standpoint, what do you see the challenges are in terms of, you know, mindful eating and snacking?
Well, I think, you know, Tim and Christina answered this much better than I can at all. But I think what we're thinking about, again, is very much about back to the portion control, and which I talked about before, and having, you know, resealable packaging. I think that's actually a very simple measure in terms of actually being mindful. I think both Tim and Christina are talking about being, you know, being aware of what you do and being mindful of being mindful. Just a personal example rather than an industry example is, you know, I love my block of chocolate, but, you know, I always only take off one row, and then I reclose it. I can put it back. And it's just a very simple way of trying to create some habits in terms of, let's not leave the whole tablet on the whole block on the table, but actually, you know, there's ability to actually go and try to be, you know, a more controlled or measured about, you know, your intake. Apart from that, I think my two colleagues here on the panel have answered the question much better than I will ever get into.
Thanks, Sheryl. And I love the innovation of the resealable packaging. I think that was a terrific initiative. So thank you for that. Now we're going to actually move on to another section about tips and resources for adopting mindful eating and snacking. So we're keeping those challenges in mind that we've just talked about, some of those distractions, asking the panelists what are some of their practical and easy tips for people who are interested in adopting mindful eating and snacking. And Christina, we might start with you this time, if that's okay.
Just unmute myself. So I think the first thing, and I've talked about hunger a little bit before, but the first thing for me is checking in on your hunger. So how hungry are you? Are you hungry at all? If you are hungry, what kinds of foods do you need to eat? And you might have to take a few things into consideration there in terms of if you've got any health conditions or your likes and dislikes with food and what foods around you. A lot of dietitians in the mindful eating space, they like to use the analogy of thinking about your body as like the car. So you're driving along in your car, you see a petrol station or a gas station, if any of our friends in the US are watching, you might look at the fuel gauge and you see, oh, it's 3/4 full, I'm okay, I'll keep driving past. Maybe it's a bit lower, so you know, oh no, I do need to fill up. So you'll pull over into the gas station or petrol station, and then you come to your next decision. What kind of fuel am I going to need? How much fuel do I need to put into my car? And that's really what it's all about. It's first of all just checking in with that hunger and taking your mind through a few decision-making steps. I think the next, I guess, practical or easy tip is to just come to every eating experience, whether it's a meal or a snack, and to come with a calm mind. If we know through the research with mindfulness that if we come to things in a calm manner, then we'll carry them out in a calm manner. So if we can come to our meal or snack feeling calm, we'll probably eat in a really calm way. And that could involve, you know, linking in more with our senses. So as we are eating, really, as we bring the food to our mouth, smelling it, what does the texture of the food feel like against our lips as we're just about to eat it? When we pop it in our mouth and take that first bite, what flavors are popping out? And what thoughts are we having about it? Do we like it? Do we not like it? And really chewing it slowly and savoring it as we swallow it. And that's really what it's all about, coming with a calm mind so that you can really connect with your senses and really get that enjoyment factor out of your meal. And once you do that, you'll find it really, it carries over. You'll start to do it at a lot of other meals and snacks.
Thanks, Christina. I really like that car analogy. And when you're going through all those senses, you were making me start to feel hungry.
Hungry?
So, yeah, it obviously works. Tim, from your perspective, any practical and easy tips for adopting mindful eating and snacking?
So practical tips, Christina's covered all the ones I was planning to talk about. You did an excellent job. And one of the things about mindful eating and snacking is just apply it to one particular meal, one particular snack per day. Rather than feel you need to do it all the time, just find some time where you can do it. And one of the classic examples given about mindful eating is to mindfully eat a raisin. It doesn't have to be a raisin, there's nothing special about it, but there's plenty of scripts and online resources. If you just Google mindfully eating a raisin, you'll learn how to really appreciate how you can really eat a small, tiny raisin, to appreciate the texture in your hand, the smell of it close to your nose, the feel of it in your mouth, and eventually after a period of time, eating it, and believe it or not, chewing a raisin and swallowing it. So for anyone who has not done it, it's actually quite a mind-blowing experience to realize the sensations you can get from food, from one simple little morsel of food. Probably don't eat like that all the time. It'd take you maybe several days to get through a meal, but it's a nice example of just what you can do with mindfulness, how anything can be a mindful moment, and any particular food can be enjoyed and savored.
Thanks, Tim. I'm going to try that today on my day of mindfulness. Shadowlyn, from your perspective, any practical and easy tips that people could use to adopt mindful eating and snacking?
Again, I think, especially what Christina said about, choose slowly and savor your food is probably one that resonates really, really strongly, and resonates for me again from the days when I was a small kid and my mother told me when we had dinner, choose slowly, enjoy your food. That hasn't really changed. Again, it's about to just continue to be mindful about it. The other part, especially for us working with snacks, is that, be careful, enjoyment versus guilt. If you're starting to feel guilt, that's probably a warning signal that, you had enough, so just, again, be mindful of that you gotta enjoy it. If you're starting to feel guilty about it, then, you are not enjoying it, you're not savoring it. So keep that balance.
I think that's a really good point, Shuttle. I think a lot of our dietitians, their clients, probably think about guilt quite a bit. I'm wondering if Tim or Christina want to add anything to that particular comment. Christina, maybe?
Yeah, for sure. So we know that guilt it's particularly unhelpful for all parts of our life, but particularly with eating. So we want to try and avoid it as best we can. As soon as we feel guilty about eating, and I'm sure lots of people can resonate with this, when you've felt guilty, you start fixating on the food more and more. And in often, like many cases, you might actually overeat. through fixating on the food anymore. So with mindfulness, we want to enjoy all foods. All foods are equal. They're all neutral.
Thanks, Christina. Tim, did you want to add anything, or
I think Christina's done that very well, and I think that the key point is just the idea behind mindfulness is that you appreciate the current moment without any judgment whatsoever. And that applies to how well or badly you think you're doing it, and it applies to the food that you're eating at that particular time, to removing all feelings of guilt about it. Just let the moment take care of itself, and mindfully think about what you're eating, whatever that is.
Thanks. So we've talked about, I guess, some practical and easy tips for adopting mindful eating and snacking, but now I just wanted to talk about what are some really tangible tools and resources that we can offer to people to adopt mindful eating and snacking. For example, there might be some apps that are available that might be helpful. So Tim, can you talk about any tools or resources that you know about in this space?
Yeah, so as far as tools and resources, it's interesting. We've all spoken prior today about technology can be a real issue in our lives, and it is, but you can also use it to your advantage. And one of them is the sorts of apps you can get about mindfulness. One that I like using is called Buddhify. It's a Buddhify, Buddhify. You'll find it in your Android or iPhone app store. It has about 80 or 90 very small little mindfulness that you can do throughout the day, depending on what moment you're in. There's ones for waking, ones for before you go to sleep, ones for when you're walking, ones for when you're feeling stressed, ones for when you're just relaxing, ones for when you're in nature, and there's ones for when you're eating. And these are very short guided mindfulness meditations or moments that you can dip into and out of throughout the day. So the app's really well designed to find the sorts of mini meditation that will guide you through that particular moment, and you do it and you move on and you try something else. So it's a really nice use of actually using technology to your benefit rather than actually seeing it as always a barrier. And there's a bit of movement as well in the space that mindfulness shouldn't always be about its Eastern philosophies. Make use of technology around you, because you can be mindfully typing an email. You can be mindfully reading something on the internet. Anything can be mindful. It's your attitude that you bring to it that matters, not what's around you.
Great point, Tim, to remember our attitude towards mindfulness as well. Christina, I know you've got lots of other resources and tools and some apps that you'd like to share with us as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I agree. Technology, sometimes it can be a downfall, but sometimes it can be really helpful. There's probably about three top tools I'd recommend, or resources. The first one would be meditation. The second would be using mindful eating apps. And the third would be using a hunger scale. So with the meditation apps, the reason why I'd probably recommend trying to start a regular meditation practice, if you can, is that we know even if we're able to do 5 minutes a day, every day at a regular time, that will help us to be mindful more and more throughout a day through whatever task we do. And that includes our eating meditation apps there, like the one that Tim talked about. The favourite ones I'm into at the moment is Smiling Mind. There's one called the Mindfulness app, Headspace, and there's another one called Calm, which is aptly named. So that would be my first thing, is see if you can create a regular meditation practice, even if it's just for a couple of minutes a day. Now with the mindful eating apps, there's so many, I can't even recommend one over the other, but just go to your app store and type in mindful eating. There's a few different kinds of mindful eating apps. So some of them help you just to slow down. So they might have a timer going, and that just helps you to time your meal and really slow everything down. Some actually help you to go through the decision-making steps. So, talking about linking in with the hunger. So it's just a matter of finding one that resonates with you. And the third thing that I was thinking of recommending was something called a hunger scale. And that's something a lot of dietitians that work in this space use. And you don't need technology for this one. You just need a piece of paper, or you can think about it in your own head. When you come to an eating experience, whether it's a meal or a snack, just check in with your hunger and try and think about how hungry you are on a scale of 1 to 10. So 10 would be extremely hungry and 1 might be not hungry at all. And just make a mental note of it, jot it down. And just that simple act of checking in with your hunger helps you to hone in and just be a little bit more aware of the eating experience. So they'd be my 3 things: the meditation, the mindful eating apps, and a hunger scale.
Thanks, Christina. Those are really helpful, particularly I think the hunger scale also, so you don't have to always use technology. So thanks for sharing those. And Shetal, any top tools or resources that you'd recommend for people to help adopt mindful eating and snacking?
Well, if you look from a product point of view, in terms of, our best source of information in terms of being mindful of what you eat is our packaging. And we try continuously to upgrade our packaging in terms of the information we provide, whether it's about serving sizes, whether it's about energy and all the ingredients that actually is within our products. So, use our packaging to help guide you in terms of actually making sure what kind of snack you are either hungry, craving, or mentally stimulated for. The other thing we see a very positive trend towards is that working with a certain different set of organizations, we're going to have much wider variety of information about our products available online and broadly available online. We find that people actually have more and more questions about our products. So it's just not just about the ingredients, it's also about the sourcing, and it's more the sustainability overall of everything we do. And we're finding that online is actually helping us being able to provide consumers with finding and navigating information through that. So that is beyond the pure practicality in terms of energy and calories, and ingredients, but also, literally, what is this product all about? Where does the milk come from? Where does the cocoa beans come from? Where does the sugar come from? Then tell the whole story. People feel very comfortable about what they're eating is actually something they know a lot about, and more than the packaging can tell you. So that's our 2 key kind of product sources of information, and so packaging and an increased focus on online.
Thanks, Cheryl. I think, the move to online and the sustainability issues are really important as well. So thank you for sharing what you're doing within Mondelez. So now we've discussed lots of different tips and resources today about how people could adopt mindful eating and snacking. If you just had the opportunity to just share one recommendation, what would that be in terms of helping someone to embrace mindful eating? And Tim, I'll start with you.
Okay, so thanks, Bree. My final bottom line summary would be give it a go. Find one particular meal or snack that you're actually going to say, right, I'm going to be trying mindful about this and see what it's all about. And pick a food that for you engages you. For me, for some reason, muesli bars work really well. I can eat them very mindfully. There's a combination of very, very discrete texture changes and taste changes, and it slowly breaks and dissolves in your mouth. And for me, that food works really well for mindfulness. For someone else, it might be chocolate. For someone else, it could be an apple. It doesn't really matter what the food is, but find something that you actually enjoy being mindful about, because if you enjoy eating that food and can really immerse yourself in the experience, then everything else will fall into place. So just find one food, one moment, try it, fail, try again, fail, and keep repeating and repeating, because the more you keep repeating it, the more you're being mindful, and that's what mindfulness is all about. Keep doing it. Remembering to do it.
Thanks, Tim. I think that's really a really good point in terms of fail and repeat, fail and repeat, fail and repeat. So really keep practicing. I think that's a really key message. And Christina, from your perspective?
Yeah, so from my perspective, I would say the one thing, if I had to pick one thing, it would be gratitude. And the reason I'm picking gratitude is possibly because I feel like sometimes there is a bit of a preoccupation with nutrition, and I work in nutrition, so I'm obviously quite interested in it, and a lot of us here today are as well. But sometimes with that real focus on nutrition, we start to lose a bit of the enjoyment in food, I guess, and that's where I'd like to bring in the take-home message of gratitude. So I like the idea, and Sheryl, I think, was linking with this before, of bringing the enjoyment back. So maybe picking one meal that you have in the week, and that could be a meal that you have on your own, or it could be with friends or family. And just trying to really focus on that meal and make it as pleasurable experience as possible. So it could be eating at the table, making the table setting nice. So perhaps a tablecloth, some candles or music, turning off those distractions we talked about, some nice plates, cutlery, the works, and really focus, give your full attention to the meal. And if you are eating with others, you know, talk through, like Cheryl was talking about, where does the food come from? Who prepared the meal? Basically just giving thanks for the eating experience and the food that you're eating. And I think that will just bring the joy back into your eating.
Thanks, Christina. I don't think we stop and think enough about, you know, food and being grateful for it. So I think, you know, that's a really great point for us to consider when we're doing mindful eating practices as well. And Cheryl, your turn in terms of one tip or recommendation for people to embrace mindful eating.
Well, I guess my word then is balance, and you know, how we substantiate that is, you know, you should feel comfortable about enjoying a treat, you know, every now and then. And, you know, we talked about, you know, and you should savor it. But it should be part of a healthy lifestyle overall, not just your eating, but, you know, your overall well-being. So I'm gonna say, also then said, you know, if you come out of that, if you really enjoy your snack and your treat, and you come out not feeling guilty about it, I think that's when you know you're being mindful.
So thank you so much to all of our fantastic panelists today for that great and terrific discussion. I think everyone would agree with me that we've learned a lot of tips and resources on how we can offer clients a way to adopt mindful eating and snacking. Thanks to those of you who have already submitted questions as we've been talking, and if you haven't already, please feel free to send us a question. Again, the email is mindfulsnackingpanel@inventivehealth.com. So that's mindfulsnackingpanel@inventivehealth.com, or reply to the email that you received earlier, and we'll do our best to get to all of your questions. We've got some coming in already. The first one is from Megan. Could you share with us some example scenarios of when to use and not to use mindful eating strategies? Christine, this one might be for you.
Yeah, for sure, I can answer that. So probably mindful eating is actually useful for most people, with the exception, I would say, of someone in an acute phase of an eating disorder such as anorexia, where there's a lot of mind trickery that goes on with our eating, and we don't want that. So that would be the time when I would not use mindful eating. But pretty much apart from that, mindful eating can cut across a lot of different people in the community. So a couple of examples come to mind. One is just linking with our digestion. So if we learn to eat more slowly, we can limit our chances of reflux. People with irritable bowel syndrome or IBS will probably experience less bloating, less pain or discomfort just from the simple act of eating more slowly, regardless of what kinds of foods they've eaten. Similarly, we can really help a lot of people who find they're struggling with overeating. So learning how to, again, eat slowly, linking in with your hunger signals and paying attention to the hunger, the fullness and the satisfaction that we do get from foods can really help us to eat the right amount of food for us as individuals at any, you know, particular point in time. So the short answer is, apart from a couple of eating disorders, I would say all of us, you know, most people in the community can benefit from mindful eating.
Thanks, Christina. And we have a question from Lana. How can we help clients eat a balanced diet, as we know that's a current issue in our society, without mindfully eating lots of discretionary food? I know, Tim, do you want to give it a go at that one?
I'm sure Christine has a few points to add, but so I'll be very quick on this one. I would actually say that already, yes, we eat, you know, a lot of discretionary foods in the typical Australian diet, but mindful eating can actually be applied when it's used well, and that these sorts of foods can be enjoyed. So it's actually not saying not having them at all, but to really appreciate and savor the taste of whatever you're calling an indulgent food at that time. And for anyone that's ever done, if you really mindfully eat a small snack, and I'm using chocolate as a good example, I've done this myself, you really appreciate how intense and sweet it is. And you actually get a lot of enjoyment from that, but you also find you don't need to eat a lot of it. So while I wouldn't say that's the overriding push to using mindfulness, you have to find some discretion in how you work with clients on this, that incorporating these sorts of foods are just as valid for someone that wants to eat more mindfully. And the end result may be they eat less, but that the reason is not to do mindfulness to lose weight or to eat less. It really doesn't work well when it's applied in that sort of paradigm. You apply mindfulness to enjoy the experience of eating food, whatever that is, without judgment attached to it.
Thanks, Tim. Christina, did you want to add anything? So the question was, how can we help clients eat a balanced diet without mindfully eating lots of discretionary foods?
Yeah, probably a couple of things, and just linking in with what Tim said, I think it's all about quality rather than quantity when it comes to mindful eating. So whatever we eat, we want to come away from that eating experience feeling good and happy. And if we learn to eat mindfully, regardless of the food that we eat, we'll come out feeling that way. The other thing in terms of helping our clients is, I guess, not engaging in good foods and bad foods. So avoiding the use of discretionary foods, trying to encourage a variety of foods. When we eat a variety of foods, we usually have a more nutritious diet.
Thanks, Christina. And Cheryl, I'm sure you've got some thoughts on how you as a company are, trying to balance diet with mindful eating and discretionary foods.
Yeah, I guess one of our focus to make people feel better about the snacks that they eat is to continue to kind of reduce the negatives, as we say, in food. So taking out fat, taking out salt, so the profile, nutritional profile of the products continues to get better. So that's more on a physical aspects. Then I said about emotional aspect. We find that consumers are more and more interested in finding out about sourcing, location, our principles of sustainability to actually mentally feel good about using our snacks. So I think across those two aspects, in terms of reducing the negatives and also enhancing the positives, and then also being more aware in terms of sourcing, manufacturing, sustainability around the overall product offerings is key to us to actually help them feel better about it.
Thanks, Cheryl. And we have another question from Megan. How can you integrate mindful eating concepts into a consult for someone who's resistant to alternative practices such as mindful eating? Christina, we might start with you.
Sure. Okay, so I would say, resistance is common for lots of clients that we see, and we need to sometimes roll with that resistance, as they say. So the first thing, apply mindfulness to this situation. We need to be non-judgmental. The person doesn't seem to want to be involved with mindfulness or mindful eating, and that's okay. We need to remove our own judgment. And the one thing I would mention for any practitioners out there, I'm assuming there's lots of dietitians, is if we can actually practice mindfulness ourselves in our consultations, we'll be much more successful in engaging our clients with the concept as well. So if we're sitting with them and really listening, really there with awareness in terms of what they're telling us, then they're more likely to get on board with the idea because they can see what it is that we're sort of modeling to them. If someone is, having said that, if someone is resistant, I would just try and pick one thing, like we've talked about some of the tools. And I think one of the most useful things we can start to do is just to bring in that neutral way that we can talk about food. So rather than talking about good foods and bad foods or healthy foods and discretionary foods, start changing the language that you use. So talking about all foods as being equal, and really encouraging an inquisitiveness of food with your clients. So exploring their likes and dislikes so that they start to foster an interest in the food that they're eating. Hopefully that answers it.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Christina. I have another question. In this fast-paced world where everyone seems to be multitasking, including myself, as I talked about earlier, how can we find time to learn and fit in a technique like mindful snacking? So I'd love to adopt something like this, but I don't seem to be able to make it a habit. So any thoughts on how we can make it easy to learn the technique of mindful eating and snacking?
I think this is something, it's Tim here, something I've touched upon earlier on, that actually use technology in our lives as your friend. If the technology really appeals to you, there's lots of reminder apps you can get. There are lots of little mini apps that will actually help you step through it. So if you need a reminder each day to do mindful, you can set calendar alerts, you can set little apps that will give you, reminders every hour or 2 hours, or you can get very small, short, sharp little mindful scripts that will just walk you through whatever mindfulness moment that you want that to be at that moment, whether it's eating, whether it's walking, whether it's just engaging your environment. So make use of the technology if the idea of sitting in the lotus position in a meditation retreat doesn't really appeal to you. So do the reverse and you'll get potentially just the same sort of outcomes. So you have the formal mindfulness and the informal mindfulness. Some people may work much better with more of the informal mindfulness in their lives.
Thanks, Tim. Christina, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I love that. And I think I was actually just thinking the other day about a quote that a friend of mine shared with me last week. And she said, how you approach one task is how you approach every task in the day. So if we can think about mindful eating in that way, if we can approach our eating in a really mindful way and really connecting with the food without judgment, slowing it down, honing in on our senses, we're likely, knowing the research around mindfulness, we'll probably approach a lot of our other tasks in the day in the same way. And because we know mindfulness through the research is actually, quite good for our concentration and our performance, in work and so forth, we'll actually probably be better off with all of the multitasking and the busyness of life. So we can start with food, the informal way of applying mindfulness, and it should carry through to other parts of our life.
It's great. I'm wondering if we all need an accountability buddy as well. I might have to sign up with Tim or Christina to keep me on track. Got another question in terms of, do you think mindful eating can actually work for everyone? Or is there some people that you think it actually wouldn't work well for?
Probably, yeah, as I said before, probably the only people I wouldn't recommend mindful eating for is those in a really acute phase of their eating disorders. But other than that, across the board, it can help us, whether we've got an eating issue or not, because as I said, mindful eating is just an informal means of mindfulness, so it should carry through to other parts of our life as well.
Yeah, I'd agree with Christina on that. Mindful eating may not be for everybody, and there's certain groups where that might not be the best approach, and Christina has outlined that. But in general, the concept of mindfulness, and bear in mind anything can be mindful that you do throughout the day, can have applicability to most people. The benefits may differ from every person, as all things do, but for most people it's something they can incorporate in their lives, and the evidence is reasonable that there's lots of mental health benefits from it. So you have the eating side of it, which could apply to for most people, but general mindfulness is probably something we would all benefit from in our lives.
Thank you. I think everyone would agree with me that it's been a great and engaging discussion today. I'd especially like to thank Tim, Christina and Sheryl for sharing your insights and expertise with us today. And to all of you online, I think we've got people all around the world. Thank you so much for joining us and contributing to the robust dialogue. We hope you've gained valuable information about mindfulness and how you can adopt mindful eating and snacking and share that with your clients. We hope you'll share these learnings with your family and friends also and other colleagues. You can find more information about mindful snacking on Mondelez's website, which is Mondelez, MONDELEZ, international.com, and also through their social media channels, where they share highlights and video clips from today's Hangout in the coming weeks. We encourage you to retweet and share the Google Hangout with your followers and colleagues and friends, and we look forward to connecting with you again in the future. Thank you, everyone.